89.7 The River, the new music evolution. My name is JJ. We're in the middle of 8 in a row. We got music coming up from...
Hello, that was Jason Jolkowskl. He disappeared on June 13th, 2001. In today's episode, we're talking about his disappearance. My name's Adrienne.
And I'm Chelsea.
And this is How Do We Find You? We're going to talk about Jason today. He was a radio broadcasting student here at Iowa Western in 2001, and he went by JJ on air. The day he disappeared within a 30 to 45 minute window. He was living off of 48th and Pinckney Street in Omaha, Nebraska with his parents and little brother, and he had a job at Fazoli's. He was called into work early with the intention of just walking to work. It would have been about 4 miles because his car was out of commission. Instead, he made plans with a coworker to get a ride, and they were going to meet at Benson High School. That was 8 blocks. They both attended the high school. It was a route he'd taken before. And then we kind of had some different answers here, but at about 30 minutes at 11:15 is when the coworker called his house to see where he was because he hadn't shown up. And his little brother had pretended to be him, and until he figured out that the coworker was very freaked out, and then his younger brother started to also get really, really worried. There was a sighting at 10:45 by a neighbor that stated they saw him and his younger brother pulling up trash cans. So that gives us about a 30-minute ratio. And he was a no-show to the high school. They pulled camera footage from that time. He had never made it to Benson High School. Another neighbor named Chester, though, said he didn't see him pulling up trash cans, but did see him walking. And their cousin advised that his little brother saw him walking as well. So that's just for us to kind of set up the background on what happened that day. There is nothing. There's no sighting. It was like he vanished into thin air. Now, we did pull up a map view, and I'm going to go ahead and show it really quickly. These are some different routes he could have taken, starting at 48th and Pinckney, going down North 48th Street and down to Bedford Avenue towards Benson High School, or just going down Pinckney Street, or North 48th and going to Bedford. Another route would have been going down to 49th Street and going down and kind of just going into this square. If you've read online about this case at all, you would see that there's a lot of people who don't believe that he ever made it down to this park. That's a very open park, but there was no sightings, right? There was no sightings in any of these areas. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more, Chelsea? Just what people were kind of saying on Web Sleuths and Reddit?
Yeah, if you check Web Sleuths, there's a lot of back and forth on this case. But a lot of people have the same sort of feeling that it's about a 4-minute walk probably to Lake James Park. And with 0 sightings, didn't make it to the school, and nobody saw him from his house to the school, it kind of narrows the window down a little bit when it comes to having enough witnesses to actually see something happen. I don't know a whole lot about this case, man. I just started looking into it as of yesterday. Again, it's like the other cases that we talk about. It's too quiet to not make you raise some questions. I did listen to a podcast where someone had interviewed Jason's mom, and she just kind of goes through the whole case, what happened that day. And like she says, yeah, Jason wasn't supposed to go to work until later that night. They did call him in early, and he said that he'd walk, which is 4 miles to get to work. But work called him back and sent someone to come pick him up. and that's why they chose to meet. I guess the coworker, she was a student as well at Benson.
Yeah, they both had attended.
So it was just a mutual standing ground, somewhere she knew how to get to. She didn't know how to get to his house. Back in that day, she didn't have a cell phone, so she's not on Google Maps.
And we want to make it clear, there's been 0 sightings, meaning that when he left this area, other than the 2 neighbors who saw him walking, and I do believe they said not necessarily in on the direction to the school, but just walking, they weren't paying attention to which way he was going.
Right.
Those were the last people to see him. So somewhere from this area where his neighbors saw him to down here where there is bus stops where people would have absolutely seen him, Bedford Avenue is a slightly busier street. Somebody would have seen him. He disappeared in this area. Even if he walked all the way over here, there's just no sightings. And back then there wasn't a lot of security cameras on homes and stuff like that. In 2001, the technology wasn't there. Cell phones didn't even have cameras on them yet. Those didn't come out for a few more years. So we're looking at just the basic, looking at hoping a neighbor caught something. But from my understanding, the police interviewed all the way through this area, like every single house, and did not see or find anything. But what we know is that he could have walked down here, but nobody saw him. And this being a two bus stop, and this being a more busier street, plus the high school, there's always kids and stuff coming to the high school to work out and do stuff. He just wasn't ever seen. So while he could have, and as a journalist we have to always use that, he very well could have made it to Bedford Avenue, the probability of him making it to this street and not being seen, to me, seems very slim, very unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
Being seen on this road or even this road, also, that's where I would think that a neighbor would have seen. So I'm not exactly sure how nobody saw him at all. Because this was, if I'm not mistaken, this was a weekend day.
I think it was a Wednesday.
It was a Wednesday?
It was a Wednesday. Wednesday morning. That would be according to his mom in the podcast I heard this morning.
Okay, so if it was a Wednesday, kids would have been in summer school because it was June 13th. Kids would have been in summer school. That would have been when they were...
Everybody's out. Like, that's...
Yeah,
mid-morning.
Mid-morning, that's when your older neighbors are usually out. It's a Wednesday morning. There's no school, so, kids somewhat sleeping in. That's the time they're waking up and going to do things. So there should have been... It was a sunny day, guys. Let me preface that. I've checked the weather. It was a sunny day with a high of 90 degrees. There should have been kids out riding bikes, throwing a football around, doing this, that, the other thing, and then there's crickets. Nobody's out gardening, nobody's out watering flowers, nobody's out and about bustling, doing things. Radio silence on this entire street. And if there were people out there, they never saw him.
Yeah.
Or they don't remember seeing him. So that to me is something that kind of stands out. And that's really, really cool that, he was able to just kind of walk and be able to mind his own business and not necessarily have to deal with people. But it also is a really bad thing because now nobody has seen him.
Right.
And so that's where we're confused on which route did he take. From our understanding, he was a very shy, quiet guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have wanted to probably take the route that had the least amount of noise and hustle and bustle. So that doesn't help us figure out what happened, unfortunately, because he seemingly went a quieter route than the main. anything you want to add more on that? We're going to move on to the next part.
Not really. That's just hard with these cases that go by for so long. After so much time, memory really gets fuzzy. And even trying to remember back then.
It does. And any DNA evidence or anything like that would have been on, like, in the environmental areas would have been washed away with rain and storms over the years. So we'll move on to the next thing. And the next part we're going to talk about is going to be that it's been 24 years. 24 years that he is missing, that his family has not been able to have closure on what happened. If you have any information, if you think you saw something, please call the Omaha Police Department. Their number is located right under the Omaha PD here on this photo, 402-444-5657. Please call them. Let them know. There's a lot of Reddit posts. There's a lot of Reddit posts about this particular case. A lot of people are very interested because it's such a mind-boggling case. And on one of those Reddit posts, which is very difficult to find now because there's so many people who have now covered it. At one point, they were claiming there was a sighting down in the old market with somebody claiming to be Jason. And I don't believe anything ever came to fruition about that claim, but those types of things are what the police want. If you think you did, they can investigate it. They can look into it. Those are really, really important for everybody involved. So 4 years ago, on the 20-year anniversary, his family did do some news conferences. They did do some news press stuff, and they had a celebration in his honor. There's still no answers. Just a reminder that it's been 20 years and no one knows what happened. No leads, nobody saw anything, and the detectives just didn't find anything. And so a quote from his cousin, Donna, said he was last seen taking the trash cans into his house, and a neighbor saw him do that. His brother also looked out the window and saw him walking in the direction towards Benson, and he was never seen or heard from again. So a little bit of different stuff kind of going on with that. Chester's the neighbor, said that he was the neighbor that saw him walking towards the high school. He believes he could have been one of the last ones to see him alive that day. Yeah, and the mind-boggling thing that everybody is, they don't understand how somebody can vanish. No trace, no foul play, nothing. In a neighborhood area where people usually, they look out their window occasionally. They would notice when something nefarious or if a weird car was in the area, like that. Those are the things they noticed, and nobody was like, there's nothing. There's nothing. That's the crazy thing going on with this whole thing. And there is a lot of websites now that have covered what has happened because it was so mind-boggling that a lot of people want to bring as much attention to it as possible. And it has created some massive legislative changes and inspired a movement to support the families of missing persons. So we'll give a little bit of information about Jason, and just so that people are aware in case you do end up seeing him. He had some difficulties with speech and language, but he was very intelligent. And he wanted to become a radio DJ. And that's kind of the background we have him. Shy, quiet kid. His car that day was undergoing repairs, and so the last thing that they see in literally 10:45 to 11:15 and 11:30, that was the time frame, 45 minutes, and it changed the lives of multiple people forever. And it's just baffling. There's no details. And Chelsea, you did a deep dive into some websites online, like Web Sleuths and stuff, where people kind of talk about the different conspiracies surrounding disappearances of people. It's one of the reasons we look at that website, to get that information. And even the theories were crazy.
Yeah, there's not even, I told you my feeling on this case and the conclusions that I get drawn into. I don't know if you want me to share that on your stream here, but
I think that in this case, that sharing our opinions on this case and sharing the different theories that are out there, maybe it will help somebody to start thinking outside the box and try and help this family locate their missing son.
Just me with my history and the things that I've seen, I just can't help but feel like this was a crime of opportunity. Like, you think of like the cartel. I don't even like saying the word because that scares the shit out of me. But those types of things are happening. People are being taken to human traffic. They're being taken and forced into drug trafficking. It's a very real problem in our world, and that's why we look the other way, and that's why it continues to go unnoticed. And as much as I don't want to believe that this is what happened here, but there's a big part of me that is leaning in that direction, only because there are so many unanswered questions that when I ask the questions on the other side, it makes more sense, and that's even scarier.
So this is where I will say, I believe it was either a crime of opportunity or something very malicious. There was nothing about this disappearance that was done with good intention or anything along those lines. Nothing points to that. You don't disappear for 24 years because somebody had good intentions for you. That's not how that works. So I don't know that it's the cartel. I don't know if it is somebody he knew. I don't know if it was a complete stranger, but I can tell you something doesn't add up. I've shown the map now. I kind of showed everybody the different routes that he could have possibly taken, and nothing on that route would have gone unnoticed by those neighbors. Somebody on those particular routes would have been like, what is going on, if it was something suspicious, which makes me think that it wasn't a suspicious situation at that time, and it could have been a known assailant. It could have been a known somebody that either Jason trusted, knew, or had at least interacted with before, to the point where he thought, okay, I can get in this car, I can have this conversation, or I can do something. Because that's the only thing that I can think of that wouldn't have caused a suspicious look from the neighbors, or made a neighbor double glance at something.
Right,
because if you didn't see anything, right, you're not going to notice a random guy getting in a car with somebody. That doesn't look suspicious. Now, 3 people hopping out of a car grabbing somebody, that's suspicious.
Now, I have had the thought that maybe, Jason with his loving heart, and most people with their soft hearts, criminals out there know how to manipulate us. So what if somebody just called from a distance, hey, I need help, and Jason being himself went to help, and we don't know,
We don't know. And it very well could have been because he was such a sweet kid that he maybe thought to go and help somebody who's yelling out help. I'm not sure completely, but I don't see that being an incorrect theory either. There were some other theories of just how weird it was that he disappeared, And people have gone down and walked the area, and they're like, there's just no way nobody saw anything if it was suspicious. Because I can tell you, I've glanced out. If I see somebody getting in a car, it's not my business. I move on. I don't even think about the person. And I mean, really, their entire description goes away in my mind within a few minutes. So whatever it was at first, doesn't seem to have started to look suspicious or malicious at first. Because that's what people pick up on, that is what people notice. There was no rain that day. There was nothing that could have caused a random, like, fall into a weird body of water. There wasn't any, like, sinkholes for him to fall into. There's nothing from the ground to eat him up at. So, I mean, the disappearance, it involves a person. And more than likely a vehicle. Because there was no, like, the cadaver dogs didn't find anything, I don't believe, either, when they went out searching. There was no, like, area in which anybody picked up a scent or anything like that. But what this has all led to is something called Jason's Law. And I would like to talk about that for a few minutes. Jim and Kelly Jolkowskl, they went on to create something called Project Jason, which was a nonprofit organization whose purpose was to provide assistance to the families of missing people. After their 19-year-old son vanished out of thin air, they knew that there was other people who had similar stories and that they needed comfort and they needed somebody to talk to. And that's when they got the idea to help other families in their situation. And from that foundation, Jason's Law became a reality.
That's where our database came from, right?
Yep, that's where the database came from. They kept pushing in legislation to help locate missing people. And since they know what's at stake, they were urging lawmakers to pass Jason's Law. And it's a measure that would create a state repository of information on missing persons. And they started that in 2005. That's when Jason's Law started. Now we have a national database statewide here in Nebraska that every single person who goes missing in Nebraska goes onto this. And so if there's any information, you're not having to call a million agencies to try and locate this little piece. You can just type their name in. You can find them. You can find the details of their case, and you can find out who to contact. And I think that it's an amazing law that was created. I think that it was an absolute necessary law. We have a lot more missing people in 2025 than we did in 2001. The crime rate has done nothing but skyrocket here in Omaha. And I think that this was a good place to start keeping tabs on all of the missing people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other thoughts you want to add to this?
I don't think so. I'm trying to... I know I got the gist of it, man. My heart goes out to Kelly.
And to
Jason's
Jim.
mom, man. She's been holding strong. That podcast I heard this morning,
This case has always been chilling and sad for me. I am a local to the area. I grew up here in Omaha, Nebraska. And while Jason was a few years older than I am in the exact same program that he was in. And we keep his memory alive. We there's conversations and people still talk about him and they still want to find out what happened. And I know that our department head, David Charrington, has interviewed his mom on several occasions because it's a very baffling case for everybody. We always are trying to help. And it makes me super sad that he that we still have no answers on this case. And I'm hoping by bringing our attention to it and the fact that we are local and that we can go out and we can still try and help his family by getting his name out there, getting the information out there. I'm just going to go quickly over his missing persons poster. He's been missing since June 13th of 2001. He was born on June 24th in 1981. So, I mean, we're talking 2 weeks before his birthday, less than 2 weeks before his birthday. He's 6'1" and 160 pounds. This would not be an easy man to kidnap. This would not be an easy man to get to. With that being said, it kind of helps my theory that it was somebody he has either interacted with or somebody he knew that maybe knows something. He does have a speech and language disability, but he has above average IQ. Unfortunately, we don't know what he was wearing at the time of his disappearance.
Yeah, we do. He was headed to work. He had his work slacks on and his work shoes, and he was wearing a Cub shirt, but he was carrying his red Fazoli shirt, which that is one thing that his mom mentioned. You know, the cops say, well, maybe he ran away, stayed with a friend. Number one, if you're going to run away, why put the trash cans back away? You know, why do your chores before you leave? Why wear your work clothes and take nothing else? And why do it 2 days before your car is supposed to get out of the shop? His car was in the shop because it had hail damage, so it was supposed to be getting out soon. So that's
Chelsea had listened to the podcast, and I had not had a chance to. So there was more details in that interview than I had found. So I am corrected by Chelsea. So we do know, but I mean, the runaway theory doesn't add up because he didn't take any personal belongings. If you're going to run away, why would you just take your work uniform?
Yeah,
because you would be found within.
When you were a kid, did you like wearing your uniform?
No.
He's not out there wearing his uniform and taking off.
That would be an odd outfit of choice. And work shoes are never comfortable, so I can't imagine wanting to walk long distance in them. So we do have the last outfit scene that was in the podcast that she had listened to earlier. We do have, for the National Children's Missing and Exploited Children, we have the number. It's 992-083. And like I said, that Omaha Police Department number is 402-444-5657. That's really all the information we have. And I know that his mom went on this podcast and she went into some details. I don't know which details of those were shared with the police. I have to imagine that all of them were. But in the actual missing persons poster, the police did not put out last known outfit. That is why I did not find that information. So if you have any information, let somebody know. If you think you saw him that day, if you think you saw somebody getting into a car in front of your house, and you just remember the color of the car was maroon, let somebody know. That's all we have today for Jason Jolkowskl, and hopefully we can get some answers soon. As always, we'll see you next time.